Welcome back to Ego and Empathy, the podcast where we explore the psychology behind human behavior and the subtle ways it shapes our lives. I'm your host, Mandy, and today we're diving into a personality type that often commands the spotlight: grandiose narcissism. At first, a grandiose narcissist feels larger than life. They're confident, magnetic, and effortlessly persuasive. They walk into a room and somehow all eyes turn toward them. They seem to radiate certainty about who they are, what they want, and how the world should see them. To many, they're fascinating. They exude power, charm, and a sense of destiny. It's easy to be drawn in, to mistake that intensity for strength, and that self-assuredness for leadership. But underneath the polished exterior, something very different is driving the show. Because grandiose narcissism isn't true confidence. It's compensation. It's the performance of superiority that hides the fear of inadequacy. The grandiose narcissist doesn't just want admiration, they need it. Every compliment is a refill for an ego that constantly runs on empty. Every success, every display of dominance, every reminder that they're special, it's like oxygen. And when that supply runs low, you'll see the cracks begin to show. They might become irritable, dismissive, or even cruel. Because behind that grand facade lives a fragile sense of self, one that depends entirely on how others respond to them. If you adore them, they feel powerful. If you criticize them, they feel annihilated. It's an all-or-nothing world, full of winners and losers, admiration and humiliation, glory and shame. That's the emotional core of grandiose narcissism, a constant battle to outrun vulnerability. Now, here's the tricky part. To most people, a grandiose narcissist doesn't look wounded. They look unstoppable. Their confidence can feel intoxicating, especially to those who crave direction, protection, or certainty. They know how to make you feel like you're part of something special, like you've been chosen. But that's part of the illusion. At first, they put you on a pedestal. They might call you brilliant, beautiful, exceptional, a mirror image of their own perceived greatness. And you start to believe it, because for a moment, you are the center of their world. But when the admiration fades, when you stop feeding their ego, the switch flips. That same pedestal becomes a cliff, and you find yourself falling off it, hard. Criticism, no matter how small, feels like betrayal. Boundaries feel like rejection, and your independence becomes a threat. Because for the grandiose narcissist, control is safety. Losing admiration feels like losing oxygen. Their relationships, whether romantic, professional, or even familial, often follow a pattern: idealization, devaluation, discard. The cycle repeats, not because they plan it consciously, but because their entire emotional survival depends on being seen as superior. The moment someone sees their humanity, their flaws, their fear, their need, it becomes intolerable. So they run, or they attack, or they replace you with someone new who will restore the illusion. And yet, beneath that performance lies an unspoken truth. The grandiose narcissist's entire identity is built on external validation. They don't truly know who they are without an audience. Their self-esteem isn't self-generated. It's borrowed. Borrowed from admiration, from attention, from the reflection they see in others' eyes. That's why they crave admiration more than love. Because love requires vulnerability, humility, and reciprocity, qualities that threaten their carefully constructed image. Admiration, on the other hand, is safe. It doesn't challenge them. It doesn't ask them to look inward. It simply keeps the performance alive. If you've ever been close to a grandiose narcissist, you know how consuming it can be. You might start off feeling inspired by their energy, their drive, their ambition. But over time, that inspiration turns into exhaustion. You find yourself walking on eggshells, constantly monitoring your words and emotions, trying not to trigger their fragile pride. You start to shrink to accommodate their ego, and that's how the cycle sustains itself. One person expands, the other contracts. So how do you recognize when confidence crosses into grandiosity? True confidence feels grounded. It inspires others without taking their power away. Grandiosity feels heavy. It demands submission, not connection. Confidence welcomes feedback. Grandiosity punishes it. Confidence is rooted in self-acceptance. Grandiosity is built on self-delusion. And while a grandiose narcissist might seem untouchable, their power depends entirely on your participation. The moment you stop feeding the performance, it begins to crumble. The moment you stop believing in the illusion, it loses its grip. Healing from an encounter with grandiose narcissism means reclaiming your perception. It means remembering that charisma doesn't equal character, and intensity isn't the same as intimacy. It means learning to recognize when someone's light shines authentically, and when it's just a spotlight demanding your applause. Because real power, the kind that heals instead of harms, doesn't need to be proven. It simply exists. Quiet, steady, and self-sustained. And that's something a grandiose narcissist can't yet grasp, but you can. I'm Mandy, and this has been Ego and Empathy. If today's episode resonated with you, share it with someone who might need to understand this dynamic. And remember, the loudest confidence often hides the deepest insecurity. True strength begins with self-awareness. See you next time.